بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So وتفقد الطير فقال ما لي لا أرى الهدهد. We were speaking about Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam taking stock of his army and missing this hoopy bird, the hudhud. It returns to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam and says that إني وجدت امرأة تملكهم وأوتيت من كل شيء ولها عرش عظيم. That number one, I have found a woman ruling over them, meaning the people of Sheba, and all sorts of things are given to her, and she has a great throne. So we mentioned this yesterday. The number one, this was the first instance that historians write that a female was leading a people, and so this was one of the points that the hudhud, the hoopy bird, presents in front of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, that do not become upset with me. I've come across something very strange. This is the first thing that he mentions, the bird mentions. Number two, without reading the Arabic, so everybody doesn't have to do a prostration, I have found her and her people prostrating themselves to the sun instead of Allah. And Shaitan has beautified their deeds for them and has prevented them from the way, so they do not take the right path. So the second thing is that they make sajda, i.e. they worship other than Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And they, as I mentioned yesterday, many commentators mention that either fire worshippers or the sun in particular they used to worship. So Bilqis, as I mentioned, was from the progeny of Sharahil. So that's the second point. So when these are mentioned to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam says, fine, the information is useful, but I have to ascertain that this information is correct. So before I decide what to do with you, I will see whether what you are saying is correct or not. Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was a prophet of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And from the responsibility and delegation of the prophet is to ensure that whoever is under that prophethood. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is sent to Banu Israel. Here, Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam had the responsibility of Palestine, the Palestine area, Syria, and under that came the region of Yemen, where the queen of Sheba, Bilqis, resided. So Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam now had a responsibility of delivering the concept of Tawheed to this queen. So he says to the hoopy bird that اذهب بكتابي هذا فألقه إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. That go with this letter of mine and deliver it down to them, then turn back from them and see how they react. So Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam wanted to see how truthful this hoopy bird was, sends a letter. The queen of Sheba had a team of extraordinary engineers. She had a palace that she considered monumentous for the region and the area. And as a fire worshipper and one who prostrated to the sun, they had engineered their palace to reflect the worship that they did. So some historians they write, some mu'arrikhin they write, that in Bilqis's palace, the way that it was designed and built, the sun would enter a different window every day for an entire year. And to commemorate that, she would, when the sun would enter into that particular window, the next day another window, she would be sat there, and as soon as the rays of the sun would enter, she would fall down into prostration and sajda in worship of the sun. So Hudhud, this hoopy bird, goes to deliver the message of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, and picks out the window that Bilqis is meant to be sat in front of on this particular morning. So when the sun comes out and the rays are meant to shine through this window, and Bilqis is meant to then, after feeling the rays of the sun, fall down into prostration, she's waiting and waiting, and there's no ray of sun that's coming through. And she's waiting and waiting, and then her devotion breaks, and she opens her eyes and she looks up to this window as to what's happened, what's black in the window, why isn't the ray of sun coming through so I can prostrate. She sees this hoopy bird sitting, blocking the rays of the sun. And so she's astounded by this. This has never happened before. The bird then flies to Bilqis and drops this letter and goes back away, and stays in the vicinity to see what the reaction is. When Bilqis receives this letter and she opens it up, it's a very strange letter. It's not like the letter of kings. There isn't an element of power, sort of craving in the letter of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. If another king wanted to usurp the kingdom of Bilqis, then it would be just a show of power and a call to obedience to that person. But here, إنه من سليمان إنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. Two sort of instructions that Sulaiman ala nabiyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam sends. That إنه من Sulaiman, this letter is from Sulaiman, and it is in the following words: Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, with the name of Allah, the All Merciful, the Very Merciful or Beneficial. Allah ta'alu alayya, do not rebel against me, wa'tuni muslimin, and come to me in submission in relation to the religion of Islam. Allah ta'alu alayya wa'tuni muslimin, submission in relation to submission to Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Now, there are lots of subtleties within this verse. It's also from the Sunnah of the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that when he used to write letters, then he would begin with Bismillah, Bismihi ta'ala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This was the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, irrespective of who he wrote letters to, even to those who didn't believe. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would commence with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and this is the Sunnah of writing letters. Khair. Allah ta'ala alayya wa atuni muslimin. When she sees this and she realizes that this isn't a desire for power, this is a call to something else, something different that she has been brought up on, something different that her father had taught her. So she, because her kingdom was run very different to other kings. Other kings were simply a sort of a demonstration of power, that I am the king and I say and you must do. With Bilqis, there was an element of we are in this together. And her kingdom was run with a lot of consultation. She had a tremendous amount of people that she would consult before making decisions. So she says, قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. She said, O chieftains, advise me in the matter I have before me. I am not the one who decides the matter absolutely unless you are present with me. So she lays down that normally I don't make decisions, and this is a very important decision. The decision is that how do we address this person, Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam? And they knew of him. Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam's kingdom was known far and wide. But like I said, I've explained before, prophets had designated areas. So it could be that one prophet is living on the earth, but his message is not meant for somewhere else around the earth. Another prophet is there. So Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was unaware that they had developed or they have been prostrating to the sun, to the fire. And so now he has sent this letter of tawheed, of submission to Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And so the queen, being aware of who Sulaiman alayhi salam, said that, listen, this is a very, very difficult predicament that we are in. We know of the might and power of Sulaiman alayhi salam. We know of his army. And so before I make any decision, I want to consult you, the chieftains, that what is our best course of action in this situation? How do we address what Sulaiman alayhi salam is saying? He's telling us that, number one, we abandon our kingdom and we go to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and we accept that he is the king. And number two, he is saying that we have to forget our previous beliefs and accept Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. So the chieftains, who they themselves were quite fortified as an army, and they were quite strong and known for their strength as an army, they responded that some letter of Sulaiman alayhi salatu should not scare us. We shouldn't become frightened by a letter. And if Sulaiman alayhi salatu wants to meet us on the battlefield, then we are behind you. But the matter is up to you, whatever you decide. So Bilqis responded that, look, it's great showing this bravado and this macho attitude that we are ready to fight if we need to fight. But let's be realistic. Our army, as big and as strong as it is nothing in comparison to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and the army that he possesses. Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam possesses an army that consists of not only men, but of jinn as well. In one tafseer, there's an account of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam that one of the rebellious shayateen, one of the rebellious jinn, is brought to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam by some angels. And the angels present this jinn shackled and chained in front of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. And the tafsir mentions that the jinn dwarfs, ifritun min al-jinn. It's not a normal jinn, it's a massive, gigantic jinn. And it dwarfs Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. The description is that in comparison, size-wise, it's like he's a finger from the finger of this jinn. Huge, massive jinn in front of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. But Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, through the assistance of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal, had control over, with the help of the angels, these jinns. And it comes that Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam stands in front of this jinn, and the jinn begins to tremble. Just, if you can sort of like, I know most haven't seen a jinn, but that picture that you've got this huge gigantic being standing in front of something that it's dwarfing, yet it's trembling in fear, and its eyes are fixed on the ground, it won't lock eyes. It's mentioned again in tafsir that the jinn would not lock eyes with Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. They were so frightened of him. So she's saying to the people that, and so Sulaiman, how Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam would deal with the jinns, that the punishment for this particular jinn was that it was tied up, shackled, and cast headfirst into the sea. The world that we live in, we know very little of it. We know very little of the world that we live in and what's in it. The ocean itself is a tremendous world that we haven't touched the surface of. We don't know what's within. Some of the jinns, one of the extraordinary feats that Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was able to procure from the jinns is that they would dive deep into the oceans and bring out the pearls that would be created within them that man can't reach. So, subhanAllah, Sulaiman alayhi salatu's story is unique, very ajib. So Khair, Bilqis says that this show of bravado is not going to work. His kingdom and his army is one that will destroy us. And if he comes to fight with us, then understand that we will be enslaved and many of us will be killed. So instead of fighting or instead of combating this situation with strength, let's use a bit of strategy. Let's establish whether Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam is a king from the kings, or is he really from Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal like he's claiming. So she decides to send gifts. And the intention behind that is to try and bribe Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. That we will send the best gold that we have. And the treasures that we have, we will send to Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam with the hope that he accepts those and leaves us and let us be. That he says, okay, almost like a tax. That he gives us this treasure and says, okay, fine, you carry on with what you're doing. If he does that, Bilqis says, if he does that, then understand that he's a king. He's only after money. But if he doesn't, and he disregards this attempt to bribe him, then we need to understand this might be something divine. So, إِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ إِلَيْهِمْ بِهَدِيَّةٍ فَنَاظِرَةٌ بِمَا يَرْجِعُ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. I'm going to send a gift to them, then see what response the envoys will come back with. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ سُلَيْمَانَ قَالَ أَتُمِدُّونَ لِي بِمَالٍ. I mentioned this yesterday. When they came with this bribe, Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam says that, are you trying to bribe me with this wealth? فَمَا آتَانِيَ اللَّهُ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا آتَاكُمْ. What Allah has blessed me with is much greater than what you are attempting to bribe me with. And I mentioned yesterday that he paved the path to the palace with gold, to show them that your gold that you're bringing to bribe me with, I use that gold to walk upon. And then he lined up animals on that same gold, and he said to his army that let them relieve themselves on the gold. Show no concern. Just to prove that point, that that wealth that you're bringing to me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me so much more. Like I said, he would command the jinn to dive into the water and bring out the treasures from there. So, but you yourselves are proud of your gift. Go back to them and we will bring to them forces. He says, when they came with this bribe, he says, go back to your queen. And we will bring to them forces that they have no power to face. And we will certainly drive them out from there in humiliation whilst they are disgraced. So Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, you've shown your cards, now I will show mine. You've displayed what your intention is, now I will show you why you should have accepted belief in me instead. And so the envoy returns to Bilqis and tells them that look, he wasn't affected by this wealth at all. There was no attempt on his behalf to accept this bribe. So Bilqis said that the best thing for us to now do is to go ourselves to him. Let's see Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. Let's speak with him. And so Hudhud brings this information back for Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam as well. And the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, along with her confidants, the tafseers mention thousands and thousands of people accompany Bilqis to see Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. When they're approximately 3 miles away, such is the entourage that's coming with Bilqis that there's a rumble on the earth. And Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam inquires from his people that, what's this noise? Is there a thunder coming? Is the weather changing? They say, no, this is Bilqis with her army and her entourage to come and speak to you. So Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, at that point when literally Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam can see how far Bilqis is, heard the noise, the earth is going in the air because of the hooves hitting the ground. He then says let me prove to this Queen of Sheba how sometimes you perceive things that are in front of you but they're not as they seem. You have looked at this world and you've looked at this sun and you think that this is something worthy of worship, but it's not as it seems. So let me prove that to her and demonstrate that to her so she understands this. So he says that to his army that يَا أَيُّهَا الْمَلَأ أَيُّكُمْ يَأْتِينِي بِعَرْشِهَا قَبْلَ أَن يَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ. That, O chieftains, which one of you will bring her throne to me before they come to me submissively? Now again, it's literally, he can see the army. It's made its journey already. Some say the journey up until that point was 2 months long. 2 months. And now it's in front of Sulaiman. He says to his chieftains, that the leaders from his camp, that which one of you will bring her throne to me. I mentioned yesterday that this throne was very dear to Bilqis. When she left the palace, 7 different rooms it was locked in. And she left guards on each one to ensure that no one is able to get inside to this throne. قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك. A stalwart of the jinn said, I will bring it to you before you rise up from your place, and for this task I'm powerful and reliable. So the jinn says to Sulaiman, give me the permission, before you stand up from your place, I'll have this throne before you. Sulaiman is unimpressed when he waits. قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. Said the one who had the knowledge of the book, I will bring it to you before your glance returns to you. So the blink of an eye. He says, if you give me permission before you blink and your eyes open, I will have this in front of you. Who was this person? Wasn't a jinn. قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. This is an actual person. The commentators, they mention one of 2 opinions. The stronger one being, it's an individual by the name of Asif ibn Barkhiyya, who happens to be the cousin of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. And he had, many historians, many mu'arrikhin, they say, this ilm of the book was Ismul A'zam. Ismul A'zam is that name of Allah, إِذَا دُعِيَ بِهِ أَجَابَ. That whenever someone calls on Allah with that name, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers that dua immediately. The Prophet ﷺ makes reference of Ismul A'zam in many ahadith. There's lots of discussion of what Ismul A'zam is, which name of Allah is it. But this person had the knowledge of this Ismul A'zam. And so Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam grants him the permission, and before he can blink his eye, this individual, through the assistance of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal and this Ismul A'zam, goes from there to Yemen, opens the different doors to the locked throne and brings the throne back. And when he opens his eyes, he sees this throne, huge throne, like I mentioned yesterday, 80 handspans long in front of him. And that's when he mentions قال هذا من فضل ربي. This is from the grace of my Lord. لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَأَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. Why does Allah bestow favors upon His servants? To test. So Sulaiman says, لِيَبْلُوَنِي, to test me. أَأَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. Am I grateful or ungrateful? وَمَنْ شَكَرْ, whoever is grateful, فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ, the benefit is for themselves. وَمَنْ كَفَرْ, whoever is ungrateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of that person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't lose anything if that person is ungrateful. Then what happens when Bilqis comes? Again, we run out of time, so unfortunately we'll have to carry on with that tomorrow, where the Queen of Sheba is present in front of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam. The rest of that story, and inshallah tomorrow we'll cover the death of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam. It's an interesting story as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq inshallah to practice upon what has been heard and said. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. نستغفره ونتوب إليه. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.